because last week we showed you some newly discovered videos, several of which were discovered by the independent journalist and frequent guest of our show, Michael Tracy, in which Chris Murphy, the Democratic senator from Connecticut, went on to C-SPAN in 2014 and openly boasted about a fact that now is deemed taboo, namely that it was the United States government that played a very aggressive and central role in facilitating the ouster of Ukraine's democratically elected president in 2014 and replacing him with someone chosen by Victoria Nuland. So when you hear about how the U.S. loves Ukrainian democracy, you go and listen to those videos by Chris Murphy, where he's, in 2014, excitingly celebrating how he and John McCain and so many other U.S. officials engineered the ouster of the elected Ukrainian president because they preferred someone else to rule that country, and they got their way. Here's a very similar video, which was unearthed earlier today. This is when Jen Psaki was the spokesperson at the State Department. We showed you a video of her last week as well, of where she just lied right to the camera when asked whether we had helped engineer a coup in Venezuela, and she said, you know, the United States, as a matter of policy, never facilitates changes of government in other countries in an unconstitutional way. We only help that democratically, which, I mean, if you're in the 8th grade and know anything about United States history, you know it was a lie, and yet she told it over and over right to the camera. This was an equally intrepid State Department press corps, led, as often is, by Associated Press's Matt Lee, who's one of the best journalists. He does this all the time at the State Department, questions very aggressively the lies told by the State Department officials, challenging Jen Psaki because this was right when the audio was released of Victoria Nuland talking to the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, in which they mapped out exactly who the Ukrainian government would be after they facilitated the ouster of the Democratic president. With Victoria Nuland's audio being heard by everybody, it was impossible for the U.S. government to deny that it played this active role. And watch Jen Psaki try and nonetheless deny it.
Officials talk about issues around the world. Of course we do. That's what you do. That's what diplomats do, and discuss especially issues where we've been closely engaged. You know, the secretary met with the opposition this weekend. He stopped by a meeting with the foreign minister. It's up to the people of Ukraine, including officials from both sides, to determine the path forward. But it shouldn't be a surprise that there are discussions about events on the ground.
This was more than discussions, though. This was 2 top U.S. officials that are on the ground discussing a plan that they have to broker a future government and bringing officials from the UN to kind of seal the deal. This is more than the U.S. trying to make suggestions. This is the U.S. midwifing the process.
Well,
isn't it amazing when you see actual journalism at work in the few occasions when we do, you see the importance of journalism. And one of the major reasons I spend so much time critiquing harshly corporate media for failing to do this is precisely because of its importance. The ability to tell Jen Psaki that you know what she's saying is a lie and none of what she's saying makes sense. Here's how she answered.
Elise, you're talking about a private diplomatic conversation. Those happen all the time. Of course, as part of private diplomatic conversations, there are discussions about what involvement the UN can have, what involvement or engagement should happen on the ground. That shouldn't be a surprise. Of course, these things are being discussed.
I don't think that it is honest for you to say, no, we don't have an opinion, and that's completely up to the people of country
Matt,
X.
there's a difference.
And I specifically mean, in this case, I'm talking about Egypt.
Sure. Well, let me
Because you do have an opinion.
make one comment here. There is a difference between private discussions that happen in the interagency process, in the building, and what we convey publicly as a U.S. government. And we have a responsibility to convey what our position is. Of course, you're discussing a range of options on a range of issues.
But if you,
that's what you do as a diplomat.
If you're saying privately behind the scenes that you're cooking up a deal, and then you're saying publicly that this is up for Ukrainians to decide, those are 2 totally different things. I understand that diplomatic discussions are sensitive and you don't want everything to come out, but those are 2 totally different positions.
Elise, what do you think happens behind closed doors when people are discussing issues internally through
This
the
is not
interagency?
discussing issues. This is talking about a deal that the U.S. was cooking up.
I think I would disagree with you. I think you're overstating and over qualifying a couple of minutes from a privately recorded phone call.
The fact that the U.S. government toppled the democratically elected leader of Ukraine in 2013 and 2014 and replaced him with a U.S. stooge chosen by Victoria Nuland is something that a few months ago, if you said it, you were told you were a Kremlin propagandist or a conspiracy theorist. But if you actually go look at the record at the time, it was a known fact. It was something that was constantly discussed and acknowledged, even by the press corps, the mainstream press corps that covers the State Department. Just like for 10 years, it was commonplace for Western media to acknowledge and report that the dominant militia in Ukraine was a neo-Nazi militia called the Azov Battalion, and now that too is something that cannot be said since we are now arming and funding that neo-Nazi militia in the name of stopping fascism. But that is the purpose of journalism, is to take government propaganda, analyze it and scrutinize it and dissect it and show the truth with evidence. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update. Catch our full shows for free, live weekdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on Rumble, and join our locals community at greenwald.locals.com for all of my written journalism, exclusive after-show Q&As, and more.